Good morning. Good morning. This is Pat Sacco, and we are on the forum. Somebody asked me, "Well, what is that? Why did you pick the name the forum?" Well, because I was looking for a poignant name, and I looked up the forum, and the definition of that word is a gathering place for information. I thought that was a perfect name to do a show like this. I know there's another show called the Treasure Coast Forum, and again, it's the same idea: gathering place for information. Well, I'm here today as my guest. I always get a good guest, especially when it's me. And I'm going to do a two-part show. And part one is going to be talking about people who retire. Now, in my household, I have someone, actually my wife, who is one more month, and she's going to retire from her job. And she's an audiologist, and she has spent 40 years in her profession. And it's been a bittersweet thing for her because, in the sense, she wants to be an audiologist for the next 50 years, and yet she doesn't want to do it anymore. So she's torn about things. And when I retired, well, I didn't retire, I just stopped getting paid. And a lot of people call retirement retardant. You know, you're not retired, you're retarded. Um, Most people don't plan for retirement. Some people say, well, and then the other aspect of it is say, well, when I retire, I'm going to be 6'7". I'm going to be blonde. I'm going to be muscular. Well, you don't do those kinds of things. But what are you going to be? When someone goes into a seminary or a nunnery, they don't escape from the world. They go into a new world, a new adventure, a new thing to do. And everything I do for the last number of years that I've been not being paid is I call it an adventure. Every day there's an adventure for me. Most of the days it's a positive adventure. Sometimes it's a negative adventure, but nonetheless, it's still an adventure. Things change. Relate a little story. When I quotes retired, I would be in my chair in the morning reading a book, and my wife would go to work, and she'd come home, and I'd be in that same chair reading. This went on day after day after day, and she thought I was depressed. Well, I wasn't because I'm an avid reader. I always been an avid reader, and I follow 20 different authors. James Patterson, Jeffrey Deaver, you name it. I don't read nonfiction. Okay, I read fiction, and I read exciting fiction. I want to get zinged. I don't want to see after the first 20 pages, I know who the killer is, kind of thing. I like to be zinged with information. And one of the zingers I read frequently is Jeffrey Deaver. And you may not know him as an author, but when I say, oh, do you remember The Bone Collector with Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie? And oh, yeah, right. Well, he's written about 8 or 9 different Lincoln Rhyme books for the crippled detective. They're fabulous. In fact, I'm reading one right now, and I'm almost done with it, and I can't wait to finish it so I can jump into the next one. Anyway, after about 6 months, I got up out of my chair and I started doing things because when you read a book, you look at the front cover and say, wait a minute, boy, this was a great book. This guy has written 6 books. Someday I'd like to read all the books he wrote. So I did that. And now I follow co-authors. James Patterson has a number of people who co-author with him. So I'm going to their co-authors and reading their books to try to figure out why James Patterson hired them to do a book with them. I'm expanding my horizons. Well, I took a course in semantics in college, and there was something that said, the more you know, the less you know. And I thought, wait a minute, what does that mean? Well, simple. Let's say your spear is, and I'm going to put a number on it. You have a circle, and the radius or the radius is 10. So everything within that circle in the radius, you know. Then you find something out that's brand new. Now your circle expands to 12 because now you're finding out things that you didn't know. Now you have to start looking at them. You start looking at them, more information comes along that expands that circle to 15 or to 18. Now there's more. So the more you know, the less you know. The more you know, the more adds on to the things that you're not aware of or familiar with. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about encouraging people about retirement. I think there ought to be a course that you have to take in retirement and talk about the things that are available to you. A lot of people say, "Oh boy, I'm going to retire. I'm going to volunteer when I retire." Other people say, I'm not going to volunteer. You pay me for what I'm doing because I've been paid for what I was doing before. Well, there's several ways you can do that. You can get a part-time job. You can, go out and work. Somebody loves animals. Oh God, I love animals. Love cats. Okay. My wife is obsessed with cats. We are obsessed with cats. We have cats, but they're children. They're our family. And you might want to volunteer with a veterinarian. Now you may take the dogs or outside for their taking care of their needs. You may help, with giving the dog a bath. You may help with kittens. You may, do those kinds of things. If you love the animals, that's a perfect place to go and, quotes, volunteer for your help. If you love children and you're concerned about some children who have trouble learning, there's a program through the Area Agency on Aging called a Foster Grandparent Program. And they pay you a very small fee, but you go into a school and you get assigned one of the children in the school who may be having trouble with math. And you sit there with them and help them learn the math skills. You are a foster grandparent. You can go and volunteer at a Boys and Girls Club where kids will go after school and do activities and have the image of an adult to fill their day. You may adopt a kid from a Boys and Girls Club and mentor them through things, go to their sports events, take them to lunch, talk about their plans, get them to stay within their studying habits, develop themselves as a good citizen. You might help somebody who's in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, help them get some of their badges or encourage them to do that. There's so many things out there that you can do to help someone. And I call it pay it forward. Do you remember when you were a kid? Did anybody ever mentor you? Did any adult ever encourage you to do something? And the answer is yes. It may have been a whole lot of encouragement, might have been a little encouragement, but it made a mark on you. And maybe, I'm sure you probably don't remember this, but maybe during that time you thought, gee, someday I'd like to help somebody. And that's the whole point of our lives. What do we do to help people? I believe that there's one question we are asked when Judgment Day. I was trained in a religion where we got in front of a big book and God said, why did you do this and why did you do that? A day of atonement for all your bad sins. I think it's a simple thing. I think you walk into an office and there's a guy sitting in the desk and he's got a pair of Dockers and a Tommy shirt and it's God. And he says, please sit down. And you sit down in the chair across from him. And he says, I have one question for you to come into heaven. I say, okay, what is it? Now you're scared. I don't know if I can answer this question. And God looks at you and he says, what have you done to help your fellow man? And you think, oh my God, wait a minute. God's son has a book. And in that book, the whole theme is helping your fellow man, helping your neighbor, and doing unto them as you would have them unto you. I think our job here is to help each other in any way we can. If it's donating $5 to a charity, if it's going out and helping to collect money, or another good program is Meals on Wheels. There are people who are shut in who need food. They are on the list. So they need somebody to deliver those meals like one night a week, a couple hours. There's so many things that are available. And you go to any agency and say, what can I do to help? Now, we tend to be a little bit afraid because, gee, my life is over when I retire. I was the president of a corporation and I was making fantastic 7-figure salary and it was so important. And 2 weeks later, I wake up and I say, oh my God, I'm nothing. It's all gone. It's done. What happened to me? I had a driver. I had all these things. I had, powerful board meetings, everything. Now I'm nothing. No, now you are going to be someone else. Now you're going to do something to continue your life. And don't be afraid to fail. I ran a treatment program many years ago. I won't get into this, but I had a couple of motivational things, and I brought them with me today. One, it was a poem that was in the Wall Street Journal back in October 15th, 1981. It was United Technologies. And the name of the program is Don't Be Afraid to Fail. You failed many times, although you may not remember. You fell down the first time you tried to walk. You almost drowned the first time you tried to swim, didn't you? Did you hit the ball the first time you swung a bat? Heavy hitters, the ones who hit the most home runs, also strike out a lot. R.H. Macy failed 7 times before his store in New York caught on. The English novelist John Creasy got 753 rejection slips before he published 564 books. Babe Ruth hit 714 home runs, didn't he? But Babe Ruth struck out 1,330 times. In other words, Babe was trying to hit a home run every time he swung the ball. 714 home runs with 1,330 strikeouts. Don't worry about failure. Worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try. That's don't be afraid to fail. The other one is, it's a little quote from Tolkien, and it's called Haven't Got Time. Opportunity knocked at a door with a message for the person within and muttered, "Come on, let me in. Here's a job I know you can do. Here's a hill that I know you can climb." But the voice inside very quickly replied, "Go away. I haven't got time." Opportunity wandered along in search of one who would rise. He said to the indolent throng, "Here's a chance for the person who tries." But each of them said with a smile, "I'd like to do it, but I'm sorry to say I'm very busy and I really haven't got time." At last, opportunity came to a person burdened with cares, and he said, I now offer the same opportunity to you that has been theirs. It's a duty that ought to be done. It's a chance if you got the time to take it," said the person with a grin. "Come on in, pass it in. I'll either have time or I'll make it." Of all the excuses there are, which this old world is accursed, this haven't got time is by far the poorest, the feeblest, the worst. A delusion it is, and a snare. It's the habit is yours, then shake it. If you want to do what is offered to you, you either have time or you make it. I don't have time to volunteer. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to help my neighbor. My neighbor needs some help. I don't have time for that. Yes, you do. You make the time. Get feeling good. Pay it forward. Someone did something to you. Uh, my father passed away at a very early age. He was 44 years old. And I was in a group, in a thing called the Catholic Youth Organization. And there was a dues you had to pay to get in. And of course, my mom didn't have the money. All of a sudden, I got a call from the director of the program saying, "Your dues have been paid for the year." I said, "Well, who did that?" "Well, we can't tell you that. It was an anonymous donation." And I had a free pass for that year. And I was so excited because I really wanted to be in that program, and it couldn't because we didn't have the money. But somebody did something to pay me. And that had had a lasting effect on my brain all my life. Somebody helped me. I need to help someone else. You can help someone who's a senior in a grocery store by not getting angry with them while they're struggling and digging through their purse to get the checkbook out to write a check, and they're very slow. You can pay it forward by just smiling and saying, "Take your time, it's okay." Rather than, "Come on, lady, hurry up. I'm in a hurry here." Why are you in a hurry? Why do we have to be in a hurry? Why does somebody have to pass you on the road when you're going 40 miles an hour in a 40-mile zone and they're passing you at 70? And you get up to the light and they're right in front of you. So they had no advantage passing you at that speed to get up there where they could have been just 40 miles an hour and been one car behind. We're in a hurry. We got to do things for ourselves. We don't care about other people. This is a bad, bad problem. And if you're in that mode, you've got to get out of that mode. We're not here to exist alone in this world. We're here to exist with billions of people, with billions of ideas and billions of needs. And if we can help one person do one thing, it satisfies us that we can pay it forward. Paying a kid's dues for a situation where he can't afford it. Volunteering for something. Giving a little bit of time. Your neighbor. We don't know our neighbors anymore. We know very few of our neighbors. Why can't we just bake a cake and take it to a neighbor we haven't met in a long time and said, "Here, I'm embarrassed that I haven't come over here before, but I brought you this cake." Back in my neighborhood, somebody got sick and they would deliver a meal. When that person got healthy, they would deliver a pie. back. Thank you. We talk to each other. We take walks in the neighborhood. God forbid you take a walk in your neighborhood now, right? You're scared to do that. Well, if more people did that, less people would have crime. There'd be more people out there to help. We just need to do things that make us feel good. And the way to feel good when you, quotes, retire is to pay it forward. Start doing something. You may influence someone. You may take a big brother or a big sister, you mentor someone. And you may take a person who would probably end up being in jail or a druggie and turn them around to become a citizen. I've seen this happen. A good friend of mine mentored a young boy who was in trouble. Well, once he started mentoring him, took him into his family, did a bunch of things with him. He was the dad that the kid never had. And this kid became a very successful person. Has a family of his own, successful in business, and he's got his head on straight. And it was because of my friend. We can save a life. You know, some of these teenagers go to a funeral home and pick out their own casket. They're 13, 14 years old. They pick out their casket because they know they're not going to live in more than a couple of years. That is terribly sad. Terribly sad. Why don't we turn these kids around and say if somebody has a parent who passes away and they're their age or younger, go and mentor that kid. Turn them around. Help them a little bit. Involve them in sports. Yeah, the kid's a klutz. Okay, fine. Well, take the klutzy kid to the field and let him be klutzy. But let him be on the team. Let him put a uniform on. Let him look at something saying, I can do this, or I'm going to try. You only try when you only fail when you do not try. You may have skills. You may not have skills for football, but you may have skills for tennis. You may not have skills for baseball, but you may find an individual sport that you can excel at. How about volleyball? How about beach ball? You know, down to the beach in the sand. All kinds of things you can try. And you don't stop trying because when you fail because you stop trying, not because you're successful or not successful. I can't urge you enough to get involved. Do something to help people. It gives you a good feeling. It gives you a better feeling than you've had before on your job. How many times did your boss say you did a fabulous job? Thank you so much for working for us. How many times did that happen? Not very often, sometimes never. Can't you turn that around to say something to somebody else? I'm going to help you because I don't want thanks. I want to help you be a better person. Kids look up at adults. Kids need training. Young people need training. Young people are empty vessels. Either they're filled with the good things or they're filled from the streets. How do we deal with that? We try to fill them with good things. We try to give them an adult role model and try to encourage them to be better than they are now. Cute little thing that happened to my son when he turned 16, he got a job at a fast food restaurant. Came home the first night and he was all upset. I said, what happened? He said, Dad, you know what they had me do today? I said, what? They had me picking up cigarette butts outside in the driveway. I said, well, let me ask you a question. What skills and talents do you have that would merit you not doing that? What else could you do right now other than pick up butts in the street? He said, nothing. I said, okay, now your goal is to learn something that you never have to pick up another butt again. Learn a skill, learn a trade, learn something. And going to college is not an answer. I worked at a university for 20 years. Okay. I should be all pro education, college and everything, and I'm not. There are a number of people who should not go to college because they don't have the capacity to compete academically. And yet they may have skills and talents that far exceed someone else. Go to a trade school, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, auto repair. Learn a skill and apply that skill. And sometimes you make a lot more money than going through a college program. I saw a cute little thing saying, sometimes you get a bachelor's degree in certain areas, then you have to learn a phrase to use for the rest of your life after that. The phrase is, would you like a pickle with that? Because just having a bachelor's degree in a certain area is not going to guarantee you get a job in that area. You may need a master's degree. You may need a PhD, that kind of thing. Go into a service program. And speaking of service, there's another thing. What about a military career? They will pay for your college education. They will pay for your training. You may go into the Air Force and you're going to become, a jet pilot mechanic. Well, guess what? When you're out of when you're out of the service, you may go to one of the big airlines, American Airlines, Delta, uh, Southwest. They're looking for mechanics, and you are a mechanic trained for airlines, for airplanes. There's good money in that. That's a good job. Doing a lot of jobs is a good job. We used to be able to work for a company and be a millionaire. Well, not anymore. You have to have your own business. Learn a trade and then start a business. All right, you're a good plumber and you're in an area where suddenly you're doing some pretty good work and a lot of people are referring you to them, to their friends. Take on another employee, start building a business, build 3 or 4 plumbers to work for you, and you're going to have a really successful job, and just do it in a very positive way and satisfy the customer. You will be successful. So even if you're in a position of, a job that's not so good, you can make it better by continuing to learn, continuing to develop skills. So those kinds of things, I think, in terms of the whole spectrum from being young and trying to start off into something, or being not so young and quotes retiring out of something. You don't retire from something, you retire to something. Okay. You might be involved in your church. A lot of people say, well, you never had time to do that. Well, now that you have time, what skill can you bring? Well, I'm not a good person in helping to set up tables for an event, but I can do some crafts. I can help decorate something. Okay, good. That's your job. Um, I don't really know what to do. I run an agency, and it's called the Italian American Club of the Treasure Coast. And I ask everybody who joins the club to do one thing. When you join, you need to do one thing, no matter what it is. And a lady came up to me. We have a monthly meeting, business meeting, and she said, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. One thing." I said, "Can you bake?" She said, "Sure." I said, "Why don't you have your one thing is to bake some cookies for that meeting?" "Oh," she said, "I can do that." I said, "There's your one thing." Somebody says, "Well, I can't move tables after an event." Do you have a washing machine? Yeah. Can you take 5 tablecloths home and wash them and iron them? Sure. Okay, that's your one thing. I'd like to help with the dinner, but I don't know how to cook. Can you help serve from the kitchen to bring a meal out? Oh yeah, I can do that. Or help gather the stuff after the meal. Oh yeah, I can do that. One thing. If you have 100 people in an organization and everybody does one thing, you never lack for help. You never lack for people to step forward. One thing. That's all. Some people do 2 things. Sure, I can sit there and check people into the group. That's one thing. Simple. Reach out and say, and don't wait for somebody to say we're looking for someone. Just step forward and say, "Can I help somewhere? I don't know. I want to help in the kitchen, but I'm kind of klutzy." Well, can you put the dinners on a tray and or in a cart and wheel them out and put them on the table? Oh yeah, I can do that one thing. That's what we need to do. Just reach out and say, "I'll help somehow. I'll give you 10 minutes with one thing." That's all we need. Every organization, you find that there are 3 or 4 or 5 people that run the organization for 100 or 200. That's wrong. Everybody should contribute to one thing. I will come to a board meeting every month. That's one thing. I can't stress that enough. We need to do something to help people. Okay. Part 2 is I was concerned about um, some of the diseases we work with. But before we're going to do that, we're going to step into a commercial and then we're going to finish up with some exciting information. thank you. And here we are again, back with Pat Sacco on the forum. Um, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about several diseases and where we are with research at this point. The search for new medications that are both safe and effective weapons in the fight against Alzheimer's disease has already demanded the collaboration of thousands of researchers and hundreds of thousands of willing subjects. But it's by far from over. Since 1998, 146 drugs have been tested and rejected. Only 4 drugs have made it through the rigorous clinical trial process that precedes approval from the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. The approved drugs have modest symptoms reducing effects, but they do not alter the eventual course of Alzheimer's disease. In addition to looking at medications, they're looking at non-medication Alzheimer's research. Medications, of course, is only one approach to managing the devastating effects of Alzheimer's disease. In other areas of research, non-pharmacological trials continue to explore the effects of treatment, such as light therapy, transcranial direct current stimulation, transcranial magnetic stimulation, acupuncture, electroconvulsive therapy, and deep brain stimulation. And it's interesting because deep brain stimulation has been used traditionally with Parkinson's disease. What they do is they make a little opening in the brain and don't go, oh my God, if they do that, it's got to hurt. There are no nerve endings in the skull. By the way, they can drill a hole in the skull. And a person can be totally awake and not feel anything. And there are no nerve endings in the brain to give you pain sensations. And they've done this with deep brain stimulation. They've made a hole, they stick a rod in, and they stimulate with an electric current different levels of the brain. And they can do this with Parkinson patients, and many times it will reduce their tremors and their Parkinson's symptoms, reduce greatly to do that. In fact, one patient, this is really weird because we think when we've looked at Alzheimer's as like an onion. And as you develop the disease, you strip the layers of onion from the core. You have a very large onion, you take a layer away, take a layer away. These are memories. These are short-term memories. Keep going. Finally, you get down to this little core of an onion, and everything is gone. Is it gone? The question is it gone? There was one patient they did with an Alzheimer's patient with deep brain stimulation. They were moving the rod into the brain, a little more, and the guy said, stop. He said, I'm getting flooded with memories I haven't thought about in many, many years, and started describing these things that he was thinking of where the stimulation was in a particular part of the brain. So were those memories gone? In his case, they were not gone. They were repressed somehow. Now, maybe what we can do is find something we can do to bring those memories back. That's a wild charge, but it's a possibility. Special diets, psychosocial therapies, and physical activity are additional areas of inquiry. Psychotherapy and education of caregivers are also being investigated as ways of improving the quality of life for both caregivers and patients. Now, I want to add a little asterisk to that. We have had an insurgence of lectures on the disease. You may have a wife who has the disease and you bring her to a lecture and you listen to this. You take her home, you put her in front of the TV set for the next 12 hours. We're not being taught on how to do things at home with our loved one. The longer you have a patient who has Alzheimer's disease, that you're taking care of them, the more you drift away from them, the less you interact with them, the less you engage with them. And the more of a burden you find, the more upset you get, the more stressful you become. And many times a caregiver will pass away before a loved one does, before an Alzheimer's patient does, because of the 24/7 sentence that you've been given. Now, how do we engage a patient? How do we keep the better touch with them? Well, many times people with Alzheimer's disease have short-term memory problems. How many people live here? 26. 2 minutes later, how many people live here? 26. 2 minutes later, how many people live here? 26. Their short-term memories are not there anymore. They say, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten in 3 days, and there's still crumbs on their shirt from just having gotten up from the table and eaten breakfast. Those are short-term memory problems that we have. What about long-term memory problems? Many Alzheimer's patients can relate long-term problems. Why don't we sit down with them 10 minutes after every hour, 6 times a day, and say, okay, first of all, we're going to do a little exercise. Follow me. I'm going to put my arms out. I'm going to lift my one foot. I'm going to lift the other foot. Have them go along and we'll do a little physical exercise. We're engaging them. Now they can go watch TV. Bring them back for the next hour. Say, okay, this time let's do something called reminiscence. Do you remember the prom? Did you go to the prom? Tell me what happened at the prom. You'll get a gush of information from a male or a female about what we did when we snuck a bottle of booze in the car. We went out to dinner afterwards, went to a party. We were all very tired, but we didn't want to go to sleep at 6 o'clock in the morning. Da 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 da. Okay. Events. Remember when you played basketball in junior high? Tell me about that. Tell me about these things. You'll get this engaging. We're talking together, okay? Let's do something intellectual the next hour. What's the next intellectual game? Oh, I know, war. Take a deck of cards and deal half and half. Turn a card over. You turn a card over. You turn to 3 and I turn to 7. I win. The card is bigger. My card is bigger than your card. Then we shuffle the cards and we do them again. We do them again and we do them again. 10 minutes, then go away. How about something called sensory? I'll take a bag, a cloth bag, and I'll put something in it. And I said, put your hand in there. Tell me, what is it? What does it feel like? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it round? Is it square? Does it have points on it? Using my sensory for touch. I may close your eyes and what do you hear? Tell me what you just heard with your eyes closed. I have 2 jars. I have a jar of cinnamon and I have a jar of garlic. Smell the cinnamon jar. Does that smell good? Smell the other one. Does that smell good? Which one do you like better? Which smelled good? Which smelled bad? Sensory, olfactory, vision, hearing, touch. All of our senses, we can play a little 10-minute game. Go away. All right. Let's do social the next hour. We're going to take a pad of paper and sit down at a table. Say, okay, we're going to have a party. What do we need to buy for the party? What would you like to serve at the party? What are your favorite snack foods that we can bring? Oh, pepperoni. Okay, let me write that down. Cheese. Okay, let me write that. Crackers. Okay. What else? Dip. Okay, we'll write that down. We're digging them for their memories. We're engaging. And finally, one last one, number 6, is religion. Let's sing a religious song. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. They'll sing and they'll follow along with us. You go into a nursing home and people are sitting in wheelchairs and you do an activity. You start singing songs. They start singing. They'll follow along. And then when you wheel them back to the room, they're not going to sing anymore. You can put them in situations. You can bring out these memories, long-term memories, to get them engaging in with you. Now, if I did that with a loved one 6 times a day, would I be continuing to encourage, engaging? Of course. Would I feel good about a response? Of course I would. Rather than being frustrated, he can't say anything. And then you talk for them. You take them somewhere and say, well, he's this and he's that, and he's sitting right next to you. You don't do that. You assume that he can understand. You assume that he's part of the conversation. And you never assume that he's not with it. You always assume. It's like somebody who's had a stroke. You never go in to say something about, about them. Years ago, one of my mentors at Indiana University used an example. He used to go up to the medical center in Indianapolis, which is about 50 miles away. And he had a nurse who was his favorite person, and she would take him around the children's ward and explain things. He walked into this room, and this little, I think, 13-year-old girl was in bed, like in a semi-comatose state. So this is one of our honeys. She's been with us a long time. Poor kid had a stroke, even at an early age. And, she just can't respond and isn't aware of anything. And she was stroking her hair. And she looked at the little girl and said, roll over, honey, and I'll rub your back. And the little girl rolled over because she couldn't understand. She probably understood that whole conversation. Oh, she's never going to get better. She's in a coma. Da-da-da-da. She doesn't have much time to live. Roll over, honey, and I'll rub your back. And the little girl rolls over. Yes, she was aware. Whenever we work with a patient like that, we always assume that they are aware of what we're saying, whether they can respond or not. Okay. Um, anyway, like they said, diet is important. Activity is important for your physical well being, actually. And if your well being is physical, you can help to alleviate some of the problems that are generated by not having a physical regime. Um, Much is known about Alzheimer's disease, but the underlying cause remains obscure. It makes it more difficult to find therapies capable of slowing its course. Amyloid is the bad thing in the brain. Amyloid contributes to blocking neural transmissions. And that's what they think this amyloid protein is the culprit in Alzheimer's. But additional disease mechanisms are being explored more actively now and may lead to valuable additional or alternate treatment approaches. In order to conquer this disease, science, clinicians, and researchers, funding agencies, and pharmacological companies will need to join their forces. With such a cooperative effort, great strides have already been made in reducing the ravages of cancer, heart disease, stroke, and infection, among other diseases. Many researchers and clinicians envision a future in which the toll of Alzheimer's disease currently takes will be greatly reduced by a healthier lifestyle and improved therapies. Now, one of the things I want to interject at this point is the next time we're going to talk about Parkinson's disease and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, is a poem that was written in the mid 1800s by the gentleman of John, I think it's Jeffrey or Joffrey Sachs, Saxe. And the poem was entitled The Blind Man and the Elephant. You probably heard about this. Blind men went to a zoo and there was an elephant. One of them touched the tail of the elephant and said, "The elephant is like a rope." Another one touched the ear of an elephant and said, "The elephant is like a leaf." One touched the leg of the elephant and said, "The elephant's like a tree." One touched the trunk of the elephant and said, "The elephant is like a snake." They were all right and they were all wrong because they couldn't put it together. In fact, I have to laugh about this. They say that an elephant was created by a committee. Okay, everybody contributed to this horrible thing that ended up not so good. Research so far with Alzheimer's disease is like the blind men with the elephant. They take a part and they look at that part and say, what can we do about that part? But we're not at the point yet of integrating all these things together. And that's what we need to do, to integrate everything we need to put together with medication. We may find a disease, and many times a drug that's being used effectively with one disease, when they try it with another disease, tends to be effective. But it was narrowly done with the single disease without looking at what can this drug do to other diseases and help. So we have thousands of researchers doing with hundreds of thousands of patients trying these drugs. Every year there's a big conference with at least 5,000 researchers for Alzheimer's disease. They get together and argue and say, well, my way is my way is the best highway. We need to be more integrative. We need to look at how we can put this together as a common cause. It's getting worse. They keep quoting 8 to 9 million patients in the United States who have Alzheimer's disease. That number will be up to 15 or 25 or 30 million by the middle of this century. And it's going to create a huge, huge medical problem. Billions of dollars are spent in terms of taking care of these patients. Somebody who has a job quits their job to take care of their loved one. That's a contribution of money that they don't make. We have all kinds of things. When you go, if you're going to leave your home, there are 3 or 4 alternatives. One is independent living. You might go and live to a nice place. You begin to have some problems. You move into assisted living where they will help you with some of what they call ADLs, activities for daily living, bathing, dressing, feeding, medication, etc. You might get to a point where you have more help than you're needed. They'll put you into a secure unit in assisted living, or if you have a number of problems you need to take care of, go to a nursing home. Now, people say, gee, well, they'll be in a nursing home for years and years. Some people are, but the average number of months, the average number of time in a nursing home in the United States is less than 2.5 years. Many people have very serious illnesses. They go in there, hospice comes in, they do those kinds of things. And if you recall, a few weeks ago, we went through and we did the 5 Wishes program for what you would like to have done to you as you are on that path of leaving this world. And you can specify all kinds of things that you want done. Once that's signed and notarized, that supersedes any of your advance directives in your will. I want my socks on. I want the lights dimmed. I want soft music playing. That kind of thing. And they must comply with it. That's an order. Okay. And you can specify what you want and how you want it done. And I'm a big proponent of that because I think that should be our choice, not my son's choice or my wife's choice. They need to know what I want and how I want to take care of it. As a matter of fact, when you go get your license renewed, they ask you, do you want to continue to be a donor? Well, my parts are wearing out. Okay, I don't know how good my parts would be for being a donor, but I may have poor eyesight, but somebody who maybe would take my vision and be able to see for the first time. That's talk about the ultimate in paying it forward. And I think we all ought to consider those kinds of things to help somebody down the road with something I'm not going to need anymore in this world. So anyway, we need to pay attention. We need to be more involved in what's going on, and we need to reach out and help. That's the whole point of this thing. And that this show has been on the air for 7 years plus, and we've done it as a community. We're looking at how can we help and educate our community. I've had phenomenal people on board. We had a situation with transportation. I know that the public transportation was from this county was trying to set up something with Palm Beach County to get people down to the VA hospital. And they were doing a collaborative effort. And we had on the air the director of Martin County Transportation on the phone with St. Lucie County and Indian River County. Those 3 people never talked to each other. But we had this whole collaborative effort saying that then somebody could get on the bus and take a bus all the way down to the VA hospital, take a series of buses free of charge down to the VA hospital. I didn't know this, but students who live in Indian River County who come down to IRSC get free transportation on a bus. I didn't know that. They don't have to pay for the bus to come to classes. Those kinds of things we need to know. How are we helping? What kind of agencies are out there to help someone who has a job, struggling to have ends meet, and their car breaks down and they have to have $200. They have the car fixed or they're going to get fired. What do? There are churches that have funds that will write a check to that repair company to fix your car so you can keep your job, so you don't have to quit the job and not have an income anymore. There are all kinds of things available through local, state, and city and federal funding to help people. We need to look at those. We need to take advantage of those. We need to steer people toward those. Well, anyway, I know I sound like I'm, preaching, but I am, because it's important that we know what to do. And fear is a horrible thing, but knowledge takes the fear away. The more you know about something, the less fearful you're going to be of it, especially when your doctor says your husband has Alzheimer's. Now, what do you do? Where do you go? Where do you turn? What do you learn? You learn as much as you can about that disease because it's important. For you to help them, you need to have that knowledge. Well, I think we've pretty much done our show for today. We have a guest of mine who was ill last night, couldn't make it. So I filled in for him, and he's not off the hook because he's going to be able to come again at a time when he feels better. And again, I want to thank you as an audience for listening to me, to listening to this show, and to following with us, because we're trying to do our best to educate you and help you to be a better person as well. So thank you again. Bye-bye.